We are starting a series on ODC. So I thought I would start with topics first, where most of the organizations are migrate their applications from O11 environment to ODC platform. Um, I mean, most of the people have the perception that because ODC platform is another product of OutSystems, the migration would be very straightforward. And actually, OutSystem is doing all everything it can to make that happen, but it's not the case yet. There is a lot of thought that needs to go in, and a lot of understanding of various concepts, the differences between the two platforms, and all. And a nice strategy. So all this is required to make that migration happen. Yeah. So in this session, we are going to at what OutSystem suggests to perform these kind of migrations, the recommended guidelines, and then we are going to look at one of the real project example that we had picked up to perform this migration. So we will go over the brief introduction of the application. So I've switched the topics a bit. So first we will go through the migration guidelines suggested by OutSystems. Then we will take a look at the migration strategy, and then a brief overview of the application, and then we will look at the challenges that we faced during this migration work, and the solutions that we applied. Yeah, so that's how this session will be comprised of different topics. So talking about the O11 to ODC guidelines first. Now, our system suggests that we plan the migration first, and this is really the most important area, I would say, in the entire journey, or the transition journey from O11 to ODC, because uh, like I mentioned initially, right, that people have the perception that they ideally they both are the product of the same company, the OutSystems, and there should not be many challenges in performing the migration, but that is not the case actually. It requires a lot of planning because the two platforms are totally different from each other. In terms of the architecture, in terms of the methodology, we build the applications, and the way we look at the applications, application and application components in the ODC framework, it's totally different from O11. Only thing common, I would say, is the reactive framework that we continue to use to build the applications in ODC. But other than that, there are a lot of differences, and that is quite obvious because we are moving to a pure cloud native infrastructure, which has different programming methodology, different concepts. So obviously, the system applications need to adapt all those trending technologies in the underlying architecture and the concepts, right? So planning the migration is the most important part of this from O11 to ODC. We need to do is perform a thorough assessment of all the application components that are to be migrated. So this is very times what happens. We look at the business aspect of our application. Okay, these are the high level my application, and these are high level integrations, and that's it. But actually, we need to look at every component, all the possible integrations that exist, uh, components that we have built, all the forged components that we are everything. Yeah, everything has to be looked into, and uh, we kind of dive into our own existing application composition, and then understand each and every component because there are so many concepts. Like I mean, I already explained. Yeah, there are so many concepts that vary, and in ODC series, I believe gone through those topics with the key differences the two platforms. So there are differences at various levels, at architecture level, at application composition level, at level of authentication, level of authorization, the way we fetch the data from the database. So it's all different. So that is the reason we need to dive into all the components in detail, not just looking at them from a very high level view. Yeah, and then another important thing is to identify the strategy, the migration strategy. Yeah, whether it's one shot migration or coexistence. Now, mm, one shot and coexistence. I mean, for those who don't know, so there is one shot means like you migrate all your applications from O11 to ODC, and then take them to production in one shot, right? And then the coexistence means that, okay, let's say I have 100 applications in my O11 environment. I pick 10 of them, yeah, in first phase, migrate them to the ODC framework, and then make those 10 applications live on ODC platform, while 90 of my applications, 90 out of 100 applications are still in O11. And I need to ensure that for the end users, there is a smooth transition. So they should not realize any impact on the way they use the applications. I mean, in terms of negative impacts, obviously there would be different screens, and you would make some modifications in the look and feel and the user experience, but the end-to-end process should continue to work. So these 90 applications which are still sitting in O11 should communicate smoothly with those 10 applications which are migrated to ODC. And then in the next phase, maybe you migrate 10 or 15 more applications to ODC, and then you go on in this way until you finish your migration from O11 to ODC for all the applications. So that is called the coexistence approach. Means you have the applications live in both O11 and ODC until the migration completes. Yeah, and obviously then you need to do it in phases. Now, obviously, if the coexistence approach is taken, then we need to identify the sequence of applications to be migrated. Now, this is another crucial aspect, like which application you would pick up first for migration, right? So that again depends a lot of on business, like how you want, how which strategy would make your application more robust, or the migration more robust, so that the end users are not impacted, the end-to-end process is not broken. And then also the technical assessment, which you have done earlier. So that helps you decide the sequence of application that need to be migrated. Then we need to thoroughly analyze the impact of migration on business process. So yeah, so I mentioned this point already. So we need to make sure that while we are migrating the applications from O11 to ODC, the business processes should not be broken. Yeah, and the end users should not be impacted in a negative way. So they should not have any bad experiences while this migration is happening. And then obviously, to make that smooth migration to happen and no impact on the business, we need to come up with a good strategy which is no or minimal impact on the business and the end users. So that is the planning part of the migration. And then during the planning part as well, once you have done the assessment of all the applications, and then you have decided, okay, what future state you want in ODC framework, like in terms of applications and libraries. So there is an activity which is performed, we call it creating a architecture blueprint, right? So I believe in earlier ODC sessions last year, you had gone through this exercise of how to create a blueprint of architecture. Yeah, there is a recommended process by OutSystems. So the planning process also includes that creation of blue architecture blueprint, like, okay, these are my applications, these are my domains in OutSystems O11, these are my modules and e-spaces and so on, and now I want to map them to ODC assets, which are mainly applications and libraries. So that blueprint has to be there, that mapping has to be there between the O11 and ODC assets. And then we very much need to estimate the code migration, the application migration work. Obviously, it is going to be a high level estimates, but as we all know, that any customer who wants to go ahead with the migration would like to know in advance how much high level estimates are required, how much effort is required to make this migration completed. Yeah, so that estimates have to be done during the planning phase itself. Next comes the plan for the data migration. Now, it's another key aspect of our migration strategy. So, we all know that when we plan for migration of applications from O11 to ODC, there is data as well, right? So, I mean, there are very few organizations who are starting fresh on our systems. For them, this is not required because they don't have any existing applications in O11 framework. Hence, they don't have any data either. For them, yeah, they can start fresh on ODC, so they can build everything on ODC. They don't need a migration, yeah. But for the organization, and which is the case very often, they already have the applications in O11 and they are on production, and hence they have the data as well there. So the data migration also needs to be planned. Yeah. When we plan the data migration now, although it's possible to keep the data model same as we have in O11, but uh, I would, in my opinion, what I feel that it's not the very good idea to stick to the same data model, because the way we organize our applications in ODC is very much different from the way it is in O11. So it is actually an opportunity for us to one, that we adapt the ODC framework. Second is that it is also an opportunity for us to fix anything wrong with our data model, which was there in O11. Yeah. So, if possible or if needed, please do consider the data model modifications as well, to make your applications more or to have a better organization of the data. Data model is identified for our applications. We need to obviously then identify the keys that are going to be impacted because of this migration. And then we identify the SQL queries. So as we all know that the way we advanced SQL queries in ODC is different from O11, because the underlying database is different. So there are differences in syntax of these SQL queries. So we need to identify those SQL queries as well, which are going to be impacted because of this migration. And then when obviously the data model is or my SQL queries are changing, the consumers or the components which rely on these entities or the SQL queries are also impact on them, right? So we need to identify those impacted components as well. And then obviously, in previous step, we need to estimate the effort required to make those necessary changes and the adjustments in our database or entities or the consuming components. Yeah. So all the estimation work has to happen as well for the data migration work. Then comes the prepare for the migration. So here again we have the we know that we have to now migrate our applications. There are certain changes which can be done in O11 applications it themselves. Like, I mean, while your applications are in O11 platform, you can make the necessary changes there itself. You can perform necessary refactorings to make those applications ODC compatible. But I mean, so there could be an alternative approach as well to do this preparation, and I think we will dive into that when we come to that real project example that I'm going to share in the session later. And then perform the code migration is the next step. So once you are prepared for the code migration is the next step. So here, as we all know that to perform the code migration, once we have prepared our applications, we also need to ensure that our applications are very well aligned with architecture canvas and all the best practices. This really helps a lot in moving our applications smoothly from or mapping our applications smoothly from O11 applications or modules to ODC applications or libraries. Now, this is one of the crucial aspect to perform the code migration. Alignment with the architecture canvas, all those layers, you might be aware, right? So we have these three layers in architecture canvas. We have concept of domains as well. So our architecture must align to all those um, architecture canvas concepts and the domain concepts. There should not be any violations, ideally, in Discovery Pro at architecture level, in AI Mentor either. Um, so that is the recommended way of performing the code migration or preparing our application to be migrated to ODC. Then finally comes the execution of the data migration, where it's like, yeah, we start moving our applications from O11 to ODC. And then once the applications are moved or libraries are created in ODC, then the data needs to be migrated, right? So for performing the data migration, there could again be different approaches. um, there could be either like all the data could be exported and then imported into ODC. There could be a separate database created where we store the replica of our existing database and then use that as the intermediary, and then from there we move it to the ODC framework, ODC entities. So there are different possible approaches to perform the data migration. Now coming to the preparing of our O11 application architecture. Um, so I mean, this is the preparation part. So it involves multiple steps again. So I thought I would cover this as well. So like I mentioned already, architecture canvas best practices is one of the areas which we need to take care of, because um, I mean, believe me, this is one of the key areas which would really help you to migrate your applications smoothly from O11 to ODC if there is a proper compliance with architecture canvas. Because architecture canvas is not just about those three layers like end user, core, and foundation, but there is also a concept of domains. And then when domains, as you might already know, so domains are more related to the business concepts or business areas that our applications, O11 applications serve. So what happens, the domain is the, I mean, I would say that the top level concept when we organize the applications in O11. um, so there could be vertical domains and then there could be horizontal domains. And if the application, and then there are some recommended guidelines of on how to make the communication happen between these different domains. So if guidelines and the concepts and yeah, architecture canvas concepts in the because um, then you don't get into these issues while migrating. Otherwise, we get into issues and then we have to get rid of. And I think that is one of the topics which I would cover in one of the upcoming sessions, where we will look at different migration. There are challenges in migrating the applications. Then there is some extra work that we need to do. So it's better to be prepared earlier rather than making those changes later, because then um, you are I mean, so you created an architecture blueprint initially, but then finally when you finish your migration or you are in the middle of your migration, there could be if we are not compliant with architecture canvas or domain concepts, there could be a lot of deviations from that blueprint. So one option is to avoid them initially, which is the best option to already prepare our applications for that migration, so that we are all aligned with our architecture blueprint all the time. Um, yeah, the second part is domain architectures. I already mentioned this one. So domain driven architecture. I don't know how many of you know about it, because my personal experience is that most of the projects I have worked upon, the applications teams, they don't know about domains, and they don't even have the applications categorized under domains. And this is actually, and this causes a lot of issues actually when you want to fix the technical debt in your applications, because um, the applications are all so interlinked with each other and they are so tightly coupled with each other that then it becomes a mess. It really becomes tough to have independent life cycles for our applications, because if this domain concept is missing, so there are hardly, I would say, two or three projects that I have come across where they considered domain driven architecture. And when you actually have that domain classification for your applications, it becomes really easy to take certain decisions in terms of what kind of integrations you want. Are those supposed to be loosely coupled or strongly coupled? And then you can easily fix the technical debt as well if the domain driven concept exists. And it also then helps in having the independent life cycle for our application. So please, I mean, before any team proceeds with the migration work, I would suggest to have the domain driven architecture in place, uh, because it will make the transition very smooth. And believe me on that point, I have gone through it, and I understand, and I mean, maybe I can explain it to you in some other session, how this domain driven concept can be implemented, and how it makes our lives easy when performing migrations, or even if you want to work in O11 in a smoother manner, then it really helps to have a domain driven architecture. So there is a lot of application independence, team independence achieved if having with the domain driven architecture in place. Then comes the validation of our application architecture. Again, this is related to the architecture canvas and the domain-driven design rules, which you can do in through discovery tools. So most of the projects or the organizations who purchase OutSystems license, and they have the discovery tool already installed in their environment. So discovery tool, as we all know, this helps us to validate the application architecture, and this is where actually we define the domains as well. So There is one level is modules. So modules are classified into uh, different layers of architecture canvas, and then that automatically classifies the applications. And then comes the concept of domains, so like which applications which belongs to which domains. That classification is also possible, but like I mentioned already, I have rarely seen customers having that kind of domain driven architecture or the classification at the domain level in discovery canvas. Um, so that yeah, so I mean, if we have that, then you might know. So I mean, we have violations at module level, and then we have violations at applications level, and then if you have the domain driven architecture, then you can see violations at the domain level as well. Having if we're having these three levels in the discovery tool properly configured, really helps to understand, okay, how our architecture is it compliant with the OutSystems recommended practices or not. So that is very much needed, and we can perform this assessment through discovery tool. And then comes the concept of mapping of O11 domains to ODC applications and libraries. So again, we are coming to domains, right? So uh, believe me, if when we talk about migration from O11 to ODC, domains is one of the key concepts. It because we know, right? I mean, there is applications modules. They are no longer applicable in in ODC, right? I mean, applications. I mean the applications in O11 are what, right? They are just kind of containers to encapsulate modules together, right? So, but in itself, application is nothing in O11, right? So it's just modules and then the domains in O11. So same goes. The mapping then has to happen between O11 domains in ODC applications and libraries eventually. Because modules concept again does not exist in ODC, right? So when we might map the things between O11 and ODC, we actually map the domains, because as we all know, right? So your end user module, your core module, your foundation module, yeah, more the business layer module, right? The widget module, all those would be clubbed into just one application, right? So that really helps to understand, okay, how my applications are going to be in ODC when they are migrated from O11. So uh, you club everything now into single unit, which is called an application, right, in ODC, which was not the case in O11. So in O11, I could put single module in a single application, right, and then another core level module in another application, and so on. But when we come to ODC, there is either an app or a library. So most of the business related stuff, it goes into an app only. Yeah. So which means almost, so everything that belongs to a domain uh, gets translated into one or more applications. I mean, I'm talking about again vertical domains. So there are again two type of domains possible. There are vertical domains and there are horizontal domains. So vertical domains are the ones which are serving a specific area of business, whereas horizontal domains are the ones which are um, used in one or more vertical domains. So it's so yeah. I mean, you might be familiar already, or if not, then maybe I mean Neha or Shubham can tell me. We can have a separate session on domains altogether where we will talk about them in detail. But yeah, it is one of the key concepts to perform the migration from O11 to ODC. Then, yeah, to refactor your architecture to other to architecture best practices. So this is again about whenever we talk about refactoring your architecture, it's mostly about loose coupling and the strong coupling. Yeah. So then you need to make sure that your domains are not strongly coupled with each other. Your applications, and then again, So strong, when to use strong coupling, when to use loose coupling, those concepts again are more properly implemented when you have the domains configured, because otherwise then it becomes tough. Like, okay, I mean, are we deciding loose coupling based on the teams, different teams they who work on the project? Because if that is the case, then if one team picks up an application which is loosely coupled today with the application owned by another team, and then tomorrow they pick up another application which is tightly coupled, then it is confusing. So which team is going to work on what applications, that also uh, is very well decided if you have the domain concept implemented. So one team can work on one domain, and then or couple of teams can work on one domain, and then when those teams are working together, they are fine to have a strongly coupled architecture if needed, because they are working on the same domain. But if there is a team there, if there are two teams who work on two different domains, then they cannot afford to have a strongly coupled architecture. So because otherwise then they will be dependent on each other for any releases. So domain concepts help in that way as well. So strong coupling, loose coupling. So and these are the main areas where we need to perform refactoring when I want to adhere to the best practices of the architecture, right? So if there are server actions sitting in between two applications which are supposed to be loosely coupled, yeah, so then the server action has to go away, service action or a REST API has to come in. So all those refactoring needs to happen to ensure that our architecture is compliant with the best practices. Then yeah, to make our applications compatible with ODC. So there are certain concepts, like we know that we don't have anonymous and registered roles in ODC, which was the case in O11. Yeah, so we need to refactor them to something which makes sense in ODC. Then we need to have take care of public structures as well. Structures cannot be public in ODC. The system level entities, again, they need to be taken care properly, because not all the system entities are available in ODC. Site properties is not an option in ODC. Rather, we have secret settings. Yeah, and then extensions again. If we are using any C sharp extensions in our O11 applications, they need to be refactored to make them compatible with ODC architecture, because the same extensions are the same O11 extensions are not compatible with ODC applications. So these are just some changes at a high level, but there are many more. When you actually perform the migration, you come across many more such situations. Then we have to refactor certain code patterns. So as we all know, one of the famous code patterns, which is BPT. So BPT is not available yet fully in ODC. There is a workflow concept available in ODC, but that is still not satisfying it's not matching with the BPT concept fully that exists in O11. So yeah, the BPTs have to be refactored. Then the SOAP services, SOAP APIs, yeah, that is again not a supported concept in ODC. We have to replace them with the REST APIs. Now coming to the real project example. So let's take a overview of the system first. So there was an application which was mainly um, supposed to perform the audit of the farming practices for those who are registered with this customer, and then the application would collect all the information from the farming organizations, and then they perform an audit, and then they tell okay whether they are compliant or not with the standard practices of the farming. So that was the core business of the customer, and so they already had a huge number of applications in O11. So some of them were reactive and some are traditional still. They were, and this was one of the customers where fortunately we had the applications classified into business domains. So they had the vertical domains as well as the horizontal domains, and each domain had multiple applications within. And then there was a foundation components as well, which were serving various domains. So this was like a horizontal domain, which was containing all these foundation applications. The technical debt on architecture canvas was quite low for this customer because before ODC was introduced, we have been working for this customer for several years. So we followed the practice of tackling the technical debt in such a way that it does not go high, and then we also take care of any legacy issues or the backlogs that exist already. So with through those practices, we did manage to keep the technical debt very low in the architecture canvas for this customer. But then there were certain technical debts which are not, which would not show up on AI Mentor or Discovery, which you would only know if you have the understanding of the business. And so there were those kind of issues which we wanted to fix. So we will look at those issues and how we fix them. So those were some additional technical debts that existed in the system. Now, if we look at the business domains, so at a high level, this is how the business domains looked. So what they did was that so the first part is that they enable their customers. So they have set of applications which customers can use to check how their practices are, and if they really want to enroll with the program or not. So that is kind of a set of applications which fall into enablement domain. Yeah. And once the customer decides, okay, I mean, they want to enroll for this program and they want to get satisfied, they want to get certified by the organization for their practices. They would enroll into the system. They would provide a lot of information about their farming practices, and then an audit would happen, and a compliance check would run against the data they have provided, and the feedback would be shared with them. So that's called a compliance domain. So again, there were a lot of applications contained within this domain. Then once the customer enrolls and then they are certified, they whatever activities they perform, they have to register all those activities into the system, and those activities are then tracked, and then there is some information generated from those activities which help us to um, pass on the benefits to the actual farmers, and also it helps the customer, like the customer who owns all these applications, to generate revenue from their customers, right? So tracking was one of the applications where all the farming activities the registered organizations were performing, they were tracked here. And then finally comes the finance applications, which would fetch the information from tracking domain, and then perform some of their own calculations and processing, and then the invoices are generated, and then certain financial reports are also generated to pass on the benefits to the original producers. So these were mainly the four domains which were there in the system. And then there were horizontal domains. So there were some foundational utilities. So these were like general components which every application or more than at least one or more than one or more domains would use to for proper functioning of their applications. So one for horizontal domain was foundational utilities. So it also contained general theme and the style guide, the general reusable components, and so on. And then there was another which was integration. So this was the domain for uh, which is a container for integrations with third-party components or applications or systems. Yeah. So this is how the domains were organized. So the first domain that we picked up for migration was compliance. So here we use the strategy of coexistence. So we did not decide to, because obviously there were so many applications in the system. We did not decide to migrate all of them in one shot. We decided to go ahead with the coexistence approach. Now, the compliance domain, I already explained about the compliance domain in the previous slide. So, inside compliance domain, again, there were different applications. Now, the problem, so I mentioned about the inherent technical debt that existed in these applications, right? So, one of the inherent problem in the system was that the compliance domain has all these applications and they were all using the same database. So if you look at the picture, there is one single database sitting in the middle. So there was just one module which was containing all the entities, and they were also kind of related to each other. But if proper designing was done, they could have been splitted, which did not happen, and then we ended up in having one monolith um, module with all the entities. So they were so because of that, now if I want to make any changes to the registration module in the related entities, I always had to deploy all the other applications as well, because the database was impacted, and any changes in the database required me to make changes in the data collection, assessment, and licensing everywhere. So it was all kind of interlinked and dependent on each other. So life cycle independence was kind of not achievable here. So now talking about the scenario, like how we started with this migration. So the chief technology officer had advised us to migrate to the ODC platform. The customer warned us that they don't want the business to be impacted due to migration. So we had to ensure that the end-to-end processes should still continue to run as is. Uh, Business obviously did not see any value in this migration, so it was really tough to convince business about the migration. I mean, finally, it's the business sponsors, right, who invest money or who get the budget allocated for any work we do in our IT applications, right? It's really important to convince them, okay, like this migration is going to add some value to their business or not. So if they don't see any of the value in any work, then they don't just then they won't just agree to sponsor that, right? So business was not convinced initially, yeah, and then customer and it is the case with most of the customers, right? They are not interested in fixing the technical dates unless the technical dates start biting them, right? So I mean, so you keep telling the customer that there is technical debt in AI mentor, there is technical debt in discovery, so they don't really pay attention to it unless it becomes really serious, and then they start seeing some performance issues or some functional issues with their application. Only when they realize that they need to pay attention to technical debts. So this was the scenario we had before we started our migration. Anyways, we started planning the migration, and then the assessment. We performed an assessment, and then there were like 6 domains, 27 applications, and there were like forge components, roughly 20 components, and only few were available in ODC. There were several third-party integrations as well. Yeah. So I mean, I am just giving you a snapshot because I really cannot share all the details here. It's because of the confidentiality of the customer information. But otherwise, we did a very detailed analysis we listed all the applications, all the domains, how many modules, how many integrations, which are tightly coupled with each other, which are not, and the blueprint and everything. So yeah, I mean I cannot share it here, but so when you actually perform your assessment, the outcome would not be as simple as like these three four numbers. It would be a lot more detailed. Yeah. Then I already mentioned which approach to take. So one shot or coexistence. So because the portfolio, the customer portfolio is huge. They have a lot of applications. So obviously we went ahead with the coexistence approach. Then planning the migration. So this is the architecture blueprint. Again, this is not exactly what we had for the customer. I cannot share that for confidentiality reasons. So in roughly this is how it looked like. So the blueprint then we wanted was that we wanted our onboarding. One of the applications is onboarding, and then there would be another application which would be an enablement. There would be another as data collection, and then finally there would be compliance. Now, if you look at this snapshot, this is a bit different from how the applications were earlier. So under compliance domain, I had everything, right? Data collection and assessment as well. Now this that has been split into two different applications, and then same goes with enablement. So onboarding has been split from enablement as well. So this is how we prepared the blueprint, that this is how we want to split our applications. So obviously then there were certain preparation that we needed to do, like for instance in compliance and data collection, we were looking at the same database. Yeah, so now if you want to achieve this blueprint ultimately, then the database model has to be broken down so that it can sit into different applications. So yeah, this is at a high level, and then tracking and finance, they become another application, and then the theme and the utilities is broken down. So the foundation horizontal domain is also broken down into theme and utility libraries, and then one library for integration. So again, this is just a rough idea of how our architecture blueprint was. It was much more detailed, which you would prepare obviously in when you perform the actual migration. And this is just to help you visualize the things, how we broke down the applications and domains in our case. Then the planning the migration. So the strategy, like okay, we decided to go ahead with the coexistence, but then we wanted to make sure that we show some value to business, right? So business comes first, right? For that, what we did, we started with the applications which are core to the business. So, and compliance was one of the application which was very much close to business and which was very much important to business. They had lot of issues with that. They had some look and feel issues. There were some performance issues. So we picked up those applications, uh, especially because we wanted to fix our technical debts, but also we wanted to give some confidence to the business that okay, once we migrate these applications, all their pains which they have in O11 framework would be gone and would be addressed. So this is how we showed value in our migration work to business. And then obviously we we tried to add some additional features to our application. So we are not just performing a plain migration here. So like if I mean I did not keep the applications, the screens or the functionality as is from while migrating from O11 to ODC. Rather, we tried to improvise it. So add some more features, some more make usability a lot more easier. So those were certain considerations we took. So this was obviously our opportunity to improvise the application and also to make show some value to business in the work that we are doing, right? So these were certain strategies that we took to justify our work or the value of this work to business team. um, and then so now the selecting application, I mean, like, so we picked up the compliance application. Like I mentioned, it is one of the core applications. But then picking up the compliance application also had some challenges. So like I mentioned, one of the key challenges was the single database. Yeah, so all the applications were dependent on it. So breaking it down was another challenge. So we will look in upcoming slides how we handle that. Um, so now, if we look at the so business was one strategy, right? And then comes the technical lead. So one thing we took while performing this migration was that so instead of fixing the technical debt, whatever existed in our O11 applications, instead of fixing them in O11 framework itself, we decided to fix them in ODC. And there are reasons for it. So we will look at them, but just to give you an idea that what were the what strategy we took. So some of the key technical debts that we come across are monolith modules, yeah, non-scalable or rigid architecture, hard-coded logic or low configurability, and strong dependencies. So these are the mainly some of the key technical debts that we come across, and we, in our case as well, we picked up some of them to address during our migration work. And then we finally perform the estimation of for our work. So and then the estimation, during the estimation we had to consider different factors, like the refactoring work is obviously one which we have to do anyways. The development or replacement of the forge components as well. So this is one of the areas which I have seen most of the organizations overlooking this area or ignoring this area of mm, the force components, the extensions, adjustment of the third party integrations, because they think that the uh, this would be either very easy. They would find some easy replacement for their force components or integrations or extensions, or it would be really easy to develop them on their own. So these areas get ignored, but please do pay good attention to them as well while estimating your work, because they can impact your estimates by a huge number if they are not paid attention to. And then the data migration. So obviously the planning for the data migration. So in our case, we had to come up with the new data model. Then we need to ensure that the data exchange happens between different modules, not only within ODC but also between ODC and O11, right? Because we picked up the coexistence approach. So the data migration strategy also needs to have some plan for exchange of information between these two frameworks while the migration work is being done in phases, right? And we obviously had to then refactor our SQL queries to support the underlying Aurora Postgre database, and then we had to come up with some strategy to perform the migration through Excel or through intermediate database or whatever. And obviously, then the migration work we estimated. So we considered all the different data model changes, all the adjustment that we had to make, all the impacted modules, and the migration strategy that we take. So considering all that, we perform the estimation for our data migration work. Now, coming to application refactoring, so like I mentioned, we picked up the compliance module. Now, a compliance domain. So in compliance domain, we have these multiple applications, right? Registration, data collection, assessment, licensing, and compliance, and they're all pointing to single module, which is all the database entities. So application refactoring improvements. What we wanted to do, we wanted to centralize the registration module. So see what's happening. Uh, there were different applications. There were different domains. Like there was enablement, there was compliance, there was tracking. Now, what was happening? All of these different domains have their own registration process. So, and they were also, I mean, in the registration process. So once you have to do a registration, when you just want to check that you are eligible for the program or not, or you if you want to test out the program. So there is one registration for that, and then there comes another registration if you really want to be the customer for the organization as a farming company. And then at times, if you are following different standards, so they have their different certification standards. So if you are following different certification standards, and if you have already registered for one standard, and if you want to upgrade yourself to a different standard, then you have to perform another registration. So registration. So for all these registrations, there were different applications. So one goal of the refactoring work was to address this technical debt as well, or kind of a business debt is here. So we want to make the registration as a centralized process or one common process for all different business flows. So that was one intention. That was one improvement area. Then we wanted to make our screens more user friendly because the data which we were collecting from were it's a lot of data, and when they provide the data, they there were so many screens involved, and they were not very intuitive. So customer would lose track of like what information they have entered on previous screen and what is missing, and if there is a validation error, then which screen they have the problem with. So there were challenges in the usability part. So we wanted to fix that. And obviously that would simplify the data collection, and it would help to improve the usability of the application. So all these certain improvements we wanted to make in our application, and this was also needed to justify the work to our business. In the technical debt area, we wanted to break down the module into smaller ones for each business function. And then we also wanted to break down the data model so that the applications can be independent of each other. So if you look at this one, this is how the compliance module was going to look like after the migration. So what we wanted to do, we wanted to keep the registration process in O11, make it common, yeah, and then everything else which was part of the compliance domain, move it to ODC framework. Now, why we wanted to keep registration in O11 was because there were other domains which wanted to use the registration module, right? So there was no point in moving the registration to ODC and then having the data exchange between O11 and ODC for all those different domains and registration module. It would complicate the things, right? So it's easier to keep communication between O11 to ODC just for one domain rather than make it happen for all those two three domains which are sitting in O11 already. Yeah. So what we did, we kept the registration part in O11, break down the data model such a way that there is separate data model for registration, the one for data collection, data processing, reporting, and compliance. So this is how we wanted to ultimately break down the compliance domain. Um, so this is I explained already. So we wanted to uh, go from ODC. Why you wanted to keep the registration in the O11 thing itself? Yeah, and then the reason where so application refactoring we wanted to do, right now where we perform that refactoring. I mean, we could have done it in O11, like if you remember the initial slides, the recommended guidelines from OutSystems, and the prepare for migration. So prepare for migration part, what it does, it includes all the it suggests to perform all the refactorings in O11 before we migrate to ODC. So, but we did not take that approach, and there are reasons for that. See, I mean, if even if I perform the refactorings in O11, I'm still sitting on O11 platform. I'm still using O11 applications and modules and things. The database is also SQL Server or Oracle. The force components again are O11 compliant. So after refactoring, I would perform some testing, right, on my code, and I am doing all the testing on O11 environment. So everything is O11 related, right? The force component, the database, and everything. Whereas the eventually I want to go to ODC. So when I so let's say I perform all the refactoring in O11 and all the testing again in O11 for to make sure that refactoring is working fine. Then when I move to ODC, I have to perform that testing again in ODC to make sure that the things are working in ODC, and I have to do some adjustments anyways because force components would change, the underlying database would change, my SQL queries would change, so the dependencies would change. So I would have to do another set of refactoring in ODC and then perform a testing again. So I wanted to save all this effort of refactoring and testing twice. So what we decided to do, perform the refactoring in ODC itself. So we decided to take all the code, all the logic of our O11 applications, copy them over to ODC, perform the refactoring there, bring in the necessary dependencies, the force components, and then test out the changes in ODC itself. So this way we save some effort on refactoring as well as testing effort. Uh, yeah, so this was kind of a strategy of where to perform refactoring. Now, reuse of elements. So O11 applications. I mean, as of now, the case is that if you want to copy and paste your O11 application components to ODC, you can do it. There is no restriction. IP protection is not there, and I believe that is the case because our system wants to promote the ODC platform, and they want to allow, they want to keep it simple. The migration from O11 to ODC, so they have allowed to copy and paste the things from O11 to ODC. So in our case, we were able to copy the screens, the server actions, the client actions, entities. So yeah, most of the elements we were able to copy and paste from O11 to ODC, and this saved us a lot of effort. Whereas if you want to perform the same copy paste operation between any two O11 applications, it's like, I mean, two different environment, two different licensed environment. It's not possible. Our system would not allow you to do that. So that is something to note here. We were so yeah. This is mainly about how we picked up the things. We were able to copy over the things from O11 to ODC. We were able to copy them from application O11 applications to ODC applications. Now, this was mainly about the reusable business agnostic elements, right? The business agnostic elements are those where irrelevant. So the elements are not, they do not contain any business logic. So for such reusable elements, it is again very straightforward. So like blocks, patterns, themes, so on. Yeah, you can simply copy and paste them over into ODC platform. Um, so this was like kind of area where you can save a lot of time. You don't have to redevelop the things into ODC. So this is how we perform. Reuse the elements from O11 in ODC, which are business agnostic. And then for business agnostic elements, like the ones which are going to mainly be part of the applications, we try to replicate certain components, but then these are like the ones which where we need to be very sure that the business, if it is being broken down based on like in terms of entities or in terms of screens, any improvements, then those improvements in the dependencies have to be changed accordingly. Um, so the same goes for the business driven elements here. Now the refactoring of the roles. So for the roles, what we did, I mean roles earlier were actually we in O11 application they were placed in a common module, and they were consuming and all the applications were consuming the roles from the same module. But what we did instead, there are certain situations where you don't really want roles to be in a common module because they are specific to a certain module or certain business area. So this was another area where we improved that we kept the business or the module specific or application specific roles in the application itself, and not put them in a common application or a horizontal domain mapped application. So this was another improvement that we did. Uh, Now, the communication between modules during application refactoring. So the smaller modules were broken down into smaller modules were broken out of the monolith module, but then they need to communicate and exchange information, right? So to make that communication happen between two different applications, obviously we need service sections, because service sections allow us to keep the business keep the loose coupling between the applications. Yeah, and then we had to expose the entities as read only to share the data. So in cases where the communication was uh, like simple, it was fine to share the entities as read only. But in cases where there was some business involved, so for that purpose what we did, we use service sections. So we wrapped the business inside service sections, and then the other module would simply consume the service section instead of taking the reference of the entity itself. And Then again, the user management part was another change here. So in O11, like we have the we have the account management done in a different way, whereas the user management in ODC is totally different. So what we were doing, we were performing the registration of the users in O11 module. Uh, but if you remember the ultimate picture we wanted to do, so the registration part we kept in the O11 itself. But then the users were then once they successfully register, they have to start using the applications, other applications which are being migrated to ODC. So we had to establish some kind of relationship between the user account in O11 and then the user account in ODC. So we maintained that through some mapping between the user identifiers between the two platforms. So certain challenges that we faced our migration work. So registration module and other supporting application were to stay in O11. The migrated modules required to communicate with them. So again, back to the same picture where registration module was in O11. There were other domains which were still in O11. Only compliance domain was being moved to ODC. The amount of data shared between the two platforms was a lot of data, right? Because the compliance domain again was providing some data to O11 environment, or taking a lot of data registration information from ODC. So and then if we kept so this required data exchange of data between the two platforms. So in this case, what we did, instead of relying on the REST APIs, yeah, so REST APIs, as we know, I mean, like they can obviously help in exchanging the data, but when it is too much of data, then the performance gets slower with the REST APIs. So instead, what we did, we exposed O11 database to the ODC platform itself. So now all the O11 entities were available to ODC platform, and our ODC applications were able to directly consume the data from O11 database entities. So this was the key challenge we had about the exchange of data and lot of data because of the coexistence approach. And instead of going with the APIs in all the cases, we prefer to have the database connectivity, database shared between the two frameworks. And then for certain REST API, for certain cases where the data exchange was not about lot of data and it did not involve entities, a lot of joins and things, we managed it through the REST APIs. Then the other challenge that we faced was that for certain forge components, the ODC compatible versions did not exist. Yeah, so in those cases, we had two options. One was that we develop our own ODC compatible version of the forge component, and then the other option. But then the problem was that there were certain forge components for some components we could develop our own version, but for certain other extensions, they were really complicated. Yeah, so we could not develop. We did not have enough time to develop the replacement for those extensions. So in those cases, what we did, we continued to consume the Forge component, those which were installed in O11 platform, and we exchanged the information with them from ODC framework through API calls. So what we did, we established the communication between the extensions and ODC framework applications through REST APIs to exchange the data. So instead of developing our own ODC compatible version, we still continue to use the extensions that were there in O11. Now, eventually, those need to be migrated or the replacement had to be developed. But for the intermediate stage, that was the solution that we used to make our transition faster. And then there were certain activities which were like required. I mean, there was a lot of data upload and download operations were there in our applications. So for that, if you remember in O11, we have the bulk insert force components that we have to use. Whereas, so it was not a challenge rather, but kind of an improvement. So in ODC, we have the CRUD operations available on the entities themselves to perform this bulk exchange of data. So we replaced those bulk insert operations with those bulk CRUD operations, which is an inbuilt support provided in ODC framework. So yeah, that's all. Yeah, there were so many things because migration involves a lot of stuff and a lot of topics to cover. So because of shortage of time, I could cover only these many items. Um, Now, if anybody has any further questions or really want to connect with me to have a more detailed discussions on different situations, then please feel free to connect with me on ADP list, and this is my profile URL. So yeah, that's all from this session. Thanks a lot for being there throughout the session. Back to you, Neha.
Thank you, Janet, for this session. It was insightful. There were some questions, I guess, in the chat. Um, Guys, if you have any questions, I request you to put it in the Q&A section. We are open for questions now. In the meantime, there's one question, Janet. How can we configure domain in Discovery?
Yeah, so we can have a session on that as well. So, so there, I don't know what kind of access you have in Discovery, but those who have the administration account, they can configure domains in Discovery, and then they can classify the application to fall under different domains. But yeah, please feel free to connect with me. I've already shared my ADP list profile URL. I can explain how it looks and how it works.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions, guys? I've started the Q&A now. Domain session required. Okay. Okay. Yeah, we can do that. So if you have any questions related to migration or the like everything the content covered by Junaid, please put your question in the chat right now. Okay. Okay.
So Manthan, uh, yeah, OutSystems is working on a migration toolkit. It was supposed to be out or made public in last year, but that did not happen. It has not happened yet. But yeah, I mean, I'm not sure when that is going to be out, but it has its own limitations, so it can handle up to 300 application objects only, which is far less count for big enterprises which are already working in our systems. So yeah, so I mean we are also waiting for it. Haven't had the chance to try it out, but yeah, our systems is working on that migration toolkit. No, our system is clearly documented that SOAP needs to be replaced with REST API. ODC support existing app stored public apps and new ODC app. I think you are talking about the mobile applications. So mobile applications, yeah, I mean the creation of I haven't created I haven't migrated any mobile application yet, but I think application is stored that doesn't care about where the APK is coming from. Either is it O11 or ODC. So that would, I mean, once you have the APK with you or the iOS version of the mobile app, then it's not a problem. Uh, I think it would just vary in terms of how you generate it on the two platforms. So otherwise, I don't think there would be any challenges. It would just be the difference in the way we generate the things.
Okay, we have one question.
Mm, So you cannot go from Pavni, you cannot go from traditional to ODC because ODC doesn't support traditional framework. You have to first convert your applications from traditional to reactive and then go to ODC. So for that again you have two options. One, that you convert your application from traditional to reactive in O11 itself, yeah, and then test it out, yeah, and with all the force components and whatever. The other option is that instead of doing all that in O11, directly go to ODC, build a reactive counterpart for your traditional application there, test it out there. So you save some testing time if you do it on ODC directly, but then that totally depends on the size of your application and the situation that you have. So yeah, I mean, but it has to be converted to reactive first. Traditional applications will be supported for migration in no idea. So Manthan, I don't think they will support because uh, they are not promoting traditional applications any longer. So they would not support a traditional in future either, especially on ODC. So it's going to be all reactive.
Okay. Any other questions, guys?
I don't think any more questions there. Can we know sample estimation how long migration took? Uh, so, I mean, at a very high level, I can say it takes months. So it cannot happen in. I mean, and again, I'm talking about large enterprises. So it takes months. So how many months? So for us, it took 4 months to complete the migration. But then again, don't take that as a like thumb rule, because it all depends on kind of integrations, kind of application, kind of technical that you have. So yeah, I mean, to product, yeah, I mean, once you migrate, it means like successful migration means going to production. But yeah, it totally depend on a lot of factors. So don't uh, take reference from anybody else or any other application. So data in entity, I mean, you can simply migrate the data. I mean, if the data entity is not changing, for migration there could be different approaches. So like I mentioned, like either you can do a import and export through Excel, you can have a CSV import export, or you can have an intermediate database to do that. So yeah, there are different options, and it also depends on what kind of database it is. Is it a self-managed database? If it is self-managed, then you have more options. You can extract the data easily. If it is on cloud, then yeah, you have less options. You cannot extract it so easily, or add the data to the database so easily. So again, that depends on the amount of data and the kind of access you have to the database and kind of infrastructure you have. So there are different strategies which are quite common. So I mean, I thought there is no point going into specific cases. The strategies are pretty common, like import or export, or having some intermediate database sitting, and then directly writing the entities, and that again depends on the kind of access you have. PDF for what? So that you can check. I don't remember. Yeah, but there are so many force components available now. So it depends what you are looking for. It could be available. So there is a, I mean, even if you go to Forge and you select like ODC option, then you can see all the list of extensions or Forge components which are available for ODC.
Okay. Okay. I guess that's it. Any other question, guys? Or we're okay now?
Hello.
Yes, hi, Vajahat.
Yes, hi. So my question is like we have IPP transfer in O11. So is there any other way of migration in the ODC means from O11 to ODC?
Can you repeat your question, Wazat? What is that? Available what?
Like in the O11, we have means we can transfer our application from one environment to another using the IPP transfer, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
so is there any other way? Means now we are manually migrating all our assets, screens, and actions by copy and pasting to the ODC environment. So, is there any other way other than this
No,
manual process, like in
no,
the IPP transfer we do?
not that I am aware of, because even IBP transfer thing is available in O11 because it's the same environment. So underlying infrastructure is same. With ODC, it's not the case. So I think copy paste is the only option that I know of. I haven't come across any other option yet.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? I guess that's okay now. We are done with the question. Um, okay. I think we have. Can we have a session of practical knowledge of how it is done?
What is done, Manthan?
Migration, I
Migrate
guess.
migration of data, migration of
Yes,
applications.
migration of the application.
So practical, I don't think anybody would be able to do because it's all customer proprietary stuff, right? So nobody can demonstrate it live. I mean, even if somebody can, then it would be a dummy application.
Yes, dummy application. I would want to see in a session. That's why.
So dummy application, Manthan, it won't be more than anybody just copying pasting the things from O11 to ODC or showing some simple force component connectivity. So which is as good as doing development in ODC. So I yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, what value you will get out of it. Yeah. So, but I mean, at least
Okay.
with my scenario, it was not possible for me because it's all customer confidential information modules data. So I cannot share it with anybody.
Yes, yes, it's fine. I know. I can understand that.
Yeah.
Yes, Junaid, one more question. Can I ask you, please?
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
In our shared environment, in our current shared environment, can we export the data as well?
It's shared means.
In a shared environment, this ODC mentor shared environment, we have 50 community members in that shared environment. So
Okay.
can we export the data with
I
the
don't
application? Means
know.
we can export the application.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Vajad, because I never worked on that. We have our own in our organization. There is a environment provided to us already in the ODC
Uh-huh.
environment. So I use that if I would have to try out anything. So I never requested for that shared ODC access.
Okay, so because means currently I'm creating a POC in shared environment, so I
Mhm.
was thinking that we can migrate what we can you know uh, get our code with the data and export that application with the data and that import back in our environment.
Yeah, not sure, but I think as far as I remember, even in O11, right? So even if you try to export anything, you can export the OML only. It's only the logic. For data part, you have to perform separate downloads or
Right,
whatever. So you have to write custom code for that. So
right.
I think through custom code you can do that, but direct export option, I don't think it will allow us. It will allow you to export the data.
Yes, yes, right. We can export the data in Excel sheet by simply creating an action
Use
timer
some
or
simple export to Excel and those operations.
right. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Junaid. Thank you.
Mhm.
So Nani is raising his hand.
Yeah. Hello.
Hi.
Yeah. Hi. Hi. Am I audible?
Yes, you
Good.
are.
Yeah. Yeah. Janit, I just want to ask one question regarding the data available in the entity. Uh, yeah. Yeah. We can migrate the OS 11 application to ODC with copy paste and some other extra stuff. But how you manage to migrate the data in entity? Because it's completely changing, right? The entity is completely changing. So we need to export the data from one server to another.
Mhm.
There can be a lot of relationship between the entities. It's a it could be a big task, right? How you manage that?
So that's what many I explained to Manthan as well. So the the data you have to see. I mean, if you are changing your entity a lot, then obviously then you have to change your data as well accordingly. So if you are removing certain relationships or adding certain relationships, then you need to make sure that your existing data, um, so whatever you are then importing to the final entity, is compliant with that entity structure. So I mean, so this is more of a these are more of database concepts rather than OutSystems or ODC. So it's simple, right? I mean, if you have five attributes and you break down your entities in two entities with three attributes and two attributes, then you have to split the data as well, and then you need to create a relationship as well. So all that then you have to manage, and it's all the database concepts how you are going to do it. So first, you let's say there is, I mean, just giving an example. So let's say I had an entity with 10 attributes. I have broken it down into two entities with five attributes each. So there must be one of the two entities would be the parent entity, right, which will get the identity like the index of the record or the identity of the record. So first I would create one record in the first entity and then create another record in the second entity with those five attributes plus an additional reference to the first entity to set up the relationship. So that way I will create all the records in the two entities. Just giving an example. So those are, I mean, those are core database concepts. Like depends on how you break your entities, attributes. How do you want the new relationships to work? It's all you have to work out based on your situation.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you,
So
Janet.
actually nothing to do with O11 to ODC here. It's all core database concepts mainly. So I mean, whatever you would do with any migration from one programming language to another, one database to another, you have to apply the same concepts here as well.
Yeah. Okay. What about the BPT? In ODC, with the BPT is not available, right? So what about that?
So for BPT, they are suggesting that you can use for certain situations workflows. For certain situations, you can use event-driven architecture. But then again, it depends on what you really, what kind of scenario you are handling through BPT. So if it is as simple as something which can be managed through a workflow, then yeah, you can manage through workflow. If it is manageable through an event-driven architecture, then you can do that. But I have seen certain documentation from OutSystems where they suggest to hold on any decision regarding BPTs. So if you have any BPTs, then hold them back in O11 for now. Uh, they might come up with something in future. So workflow is one of the options. Event-driven architecture is another, but yeah, I mean they might be coming up with something more. I think I have seen the roadmap somewhere, and they so because BPT works on parallel. I mean, you can have so many processes running in parallel, right? Workflow does not support that. So I think in 2025 they have a roadmap to implement that, add support for that, but we are not sure. So if possible, then in such scenarios, it's better to hold back the migration of BPTs.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Is that it, guys? Do you have any other question? Okay. If you have any further questions, in case you missed asking it here, you can connect with Junaid on EDP list as well, like he said. Um, Junaid, you can share your profile in the chat of EDP list
Mm, we are
if you
doing
can.
it now.
Okay. So you can connect with him also directly on EDP list, guys. Um, yeah. Okay. I'll just paste it in. Okay. So with that, the session is completed. Now we have a quiz for all of you. Okay. So I want all of you to quickly take the quiz. So what I'll do is I'll just share my screen. This is a masterclass, so we are having 3 sessions of this masterclass. Whoever is going to win the maximum number of quiz, he or she top 3 will get the swag kit. Okay, we are also planning for a voucher, for voucher, or a hamper with voucher, but I'm not sure yet. But definitely you'll get a swag kit. The top 3 will get swag kits for it. Okay, so let me quickly share my screen. And this quiz we are trying for the first time, the way we are taking. So if something, it can take a lot of time to start or something. I want you to, first of all, can you see my screen, guys? Please confirm.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, can see.
Okay, thank you. So I want you to go to slido.com. um, Either scan this QR code or you can enter the quiz ID. Okay, I can see people joining. That is great. Okay, great. There are like 17 people, 18. Okay. Uh-oh. Yeah, there you are. Okay. Can you guys see the first question, guys?
Noted.
Okay. There are 18 people. Guys, can everyone please join? I'll just wait for another few seconds. Okay. So let me know if you can see the first question.
Yeah, can see.
Thank you. Please try to answer. So the answer is C. Okay, and this is the leaderboard, according to which Sangam got the answer correct. Then we have Daivang and Ajmal, Wajahat and Dinesh. Okay. Great, guys. Let's do the next question. What cannot be shared between applications? Okay. Correct answer is C, blocks. Okay. Only 25% have answered C, but the correct answer is C. Let's see the next question, guys. What is the primary purpose of libraries? The correct answer is B, store reusable business agnostic elements, and maximum people got it correct. That's great. Going to the next question. For which of the following pair both the elements can be producer as well as consumer for each other? Okay. The answer is C, library to library. That means a library can be a producer for another library or it can be a consumer of another library. Right? So maximum people got it correct. That's good. The answer is C. Uh, let's see the next question. Which of the following is an example of strong dependency? So the correct answer is C, and maximum people got it right. That's great. Regular entities are not, they do not create strong dependency. Okay. We can see the leaderboard. Actually, there are 10 questions. The current score is Sangam is leading again. Then we have Daivang with all correct answers. Aditya, Mukesh, and Ajmal. Okay. But we have five more questions, guys. So let's see the next question. Which of the following concept is not supported in ODC? Okay, I guess everyone should know this now. Okay. The answer is PPT. Uh, maximum people got that correct. Workflows are supported, guys, in ODC. Okay. Let's go to the next question. What are the recommended migration strategies? Okay. The answer is C. We have both one shot and coexistence. Depends on your scenario, what you want to choose, right? So the answer is C. Let's go to the next question. What is true about libraries? Okay. The answer is C. Library exists at the same level as web. Okay. Web apps and mobile apps. Okay. Uh, 33% got it correct. Let's go to the next question. Ninth question. How are user identities secured within ODC? Come on, guys, we just have one more question to go after this. Okay. The answer is B, and all of you got it. Most of you got it correct. That's great. Let's see the last question. Which of the following is an example of strong dependency? Okay, I guess this one got repeated. Issues. Let's see. So the answer is C, static entity shared by library to an application, and 71% got it correct. Okay, now let's see the final leaderboard. Sangam as the first one. Then we have Aditya and Ajmal on the third position, Taimang and Abhijit on fourth and fifth. That's great, guys. Congratulations. Okay, I guess Let me stop sharing the screen. I guess we are. Congratulations, Sangam, and all the winners, and everyone, like, for
Congratulations,
participating.
guys.
Okay, so we have two more sessions of masterclass. Okay, on the coming Saturdays, right, of this month. I request all of you to please join those as well, and we'll have quiz there as also. Like I said, top three winners will get swag kit, and also we are looking for voucher or hamper. Okay. Now I want everyone to please come on video so I can just take one photo and we'll wrap the session. If everyone can come on video, guys, quickly. Thank you, Aditya, Mukesh, Dinesh, Sangam. That is great. Okay, I'll just quickly take the photo, guys. Thank you. Okay. So with that, we are done with today's session. But if you remember, we have a certification series also going on in Pune group, and we have one session coming on this Tuesday, and this is going to be taken by Nuro Rolo. I guess you might have seen the video or LinkedIn post. So I request you, if you're preparing for front end, now OutSystem has launched expert developer in O11, the new certificate, right? So if to achieve that, you need to be certified in in basic development like web development, security, and architecture plus front end. So if you don't have front end certificate, you will not get the expert one. So this month we are having a session which will help you to clear front end certification. Okay, on 19th. So it will be great if all of you can join that as well. Okay. With that, we are done, guys. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you, Junaid, for this session.
Thank you, Neha. Thank you all for joining the session. See you in the next one.
Yeah.
Bye bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.